The sun rose on what seemed an ordinary Tuesday, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink. The city below began to stir, oblivious to the seismic shift that was about to occur. Cars started their engines, coffee machines whirred to life, and the digital pulse of the world quickened, unaware of the impending silence. But the world was about to change. An unsettling stillness hung in the air, a prelude to the digital storm that was brewing. The vibrant energy of the connected world was about to be abruptly cut short, leaving behind a void that no one could have anticipated. Across the globe, billions of alarms failed to chime, their digital voices silenced. The carefully programmed routines of millions were instantly disrupted as the devices they relied on fell into a state of unresponsive slumber. The first sign that something was terribly wrong. Smart speakers fell silent, their cheerful greetings and helpful answers replaced by an eerie quiet. The ever-present hum of the digital assistant, a constant companion in countless homes, vanished without a trace, and phones displayed only "no service," mocking the user with their uselessness. The lifeline to the digital world, the constant stream of information and connection, was abruptly severed. Maria, a graphic designer in Lisbon, ready to start her workday, tapped her unresponsive device, annoyance flickering across her face as she tried again and again. The initial frustration quickly morphed into confusion as she realized something was truly amiss. This was no local outage. It was a global disconnection, a phenomenon of unprecedented scale. From bustling metropolises to remote villages, the digital world had simultaneously gone dark. The invisible architecture of our digital world, the intricate network of cables, servers, and satellites that connected us all, had vanished in an instant, leaving behind a void that echoed with the absence of data. Smart thermostats reset, plunging homes into unpredictable temperatures, security cameras went dark, leaving streets and buildings vulnerable and unmonitored, and digital assistants fell mute, their once helpful voices now replaced by an unsettling silence. The smart homes of the future had suddenly become strangely, eerily dumb. The world ended not with chaos, but with a baffling inability to check emails, a seemingly trivial inconvenience that masked a much deeper crisis. Confusion and irritation spread. A Tokyo commuter's train pass failed, stranding him in a sea of equally bewildered travelers. A Nairobi student's thesis was trapped in the cloud, years of work inaccessible, and New York's trading floor was frozen, the complex algorithms and high-speed data streams grinding to a halt. The digital nervous system that coordinated our lives, the intricate web of connections that facilitated everything from global finance to simple communication, was severed. At first, most assumed it was a minor glitch, a temporary inconvenience that would soon be resolved. But as minutes turned to hours, a new awareness dawned, a chilling realization that this was something far more profound. No news alerts, no social media posts, no official statements, just silence, an unsettling void where information once flowed freely. The usual cacophony of the digital world had been replaced by an eerie quiet. People stepped onto balconies, gathering in small groups, seeking answers and reassurance from their neighbors. Phones held up in vain, searching for a signal that would never come. The familiar gesture of reaching for connection only highlighted the stark reality of disconnection. The digital ocean had receded, leaving us stranded on the shores of an analog reality, exposed and vulnerable without the digital tools we had come to rely on. The day of the great disconnection had begun, a day that would forever alter the course of human history. The world was still spinning, the sun still rising and setting, but everything felt different, irrevocably changed by the sudden absence of the digital world. The silence was the loudest alarm of all, a stark reminder of our dependence on the digital world and the fragility of the connections we had taken for granted. Inside homes, the digital heartbeat had stopped, the constant stream of information, the endless notifications, all silenced. A stillness descended, a quiet that many had forgotten existed. The usual digital hum that permeated every corner of modern life was abruptly absent. The familiar hums and pings were gone, those little auditory cues that signaled a new email, a social media update, or a text message. The silence was almost deafening at first, a stark contrast to the constant connectivity that had become the norm. Smart TVs and tablets became lifeless objects. Their screens, once vibrant portals to other worlds, were now dark and reflective, mirroring the quiet emptiness of the room. They sat dormant, symbols of a world on pause. Families faced each other without digital buffers, those screens that usually mediated their interactions, forced to make eye contact to truly see one another, perhaps for the first time in a long time. No cartoons, no apps, just awkward silence. The initial discomfort was palpable, a void where entertainment and distraction used to be. What to do with all this newfound time? Board games and puzzles reappeared, dusted off from forgotten shelves. Old favorites were rediscovered, and new challenges were embraced as families sought ways to fill the void. Conversation became the main activity, real, unfiltered dialogue, not mediated by emojis or abbreviated texts. Stories were shared, opinions were voiced, and connections were forged. Siblings who once texted from adjacent rooms, communicating through screens even when physically close, now spoke face to face. They discovered shared interests, resolved old conflicts, and simply enjoyed each other's company in a way they hadn't in years. The kitchen reverted to basics, a place for creating sustenance, not just microwaving convenience meals. No digital shopping lists, no online recipes, just memory and cookbooks. The tactile experience of flipping through pages, the aroma of spices filling the air, a return to simpler culinary pleasures. Preparing a meal became an act of improvisation, a chance to experiment and create without the pressure of perfectly replicating an online recipe. The home transformed from a connected hub, a node in a vast digital network, to an isolated island, a self-contained world where the only connections that mattered were the ones within its walls. With no social media, people were left alone with their thoughts and families. No curated feeds, no endless scrolling, just the quiet contemplation of their own lives. For some it was anxiety, the fear of missing out, the withdrawal from constant stimulation, the uncertainty of a world without instant answers. For others a quiet liberation, a chance to disconnect from the noise and reconnect with themselves, to rediscover passions and pursue forgotten hobbies. The pressure to perform and document vanished. No need to capture the perfect moment for social media, no obligation to share every experience with the world. For 24 hours, the home became a sanctuary of enforced simplicity, a refuge from the relentless demands of the digital age. The absence of digital noise revealed what had been missing: genuine connection, uninterrupted thought, and the simple pleasure of being present in the moment. Life slowed down, and people rediscovered each other, finding solace and connection in the quiet spaces between the digital distractions. They remembered how to be a family, how to be human, without the constant interference of technology. The global economy, once a vibrant and interconnected network powered by the invisible threads of data, found itself teetering on the brink. The digital infrastructure that had become the backbone of modern commerce was about to face its greatest challenge. Suddenly, with a jolt that reverberated across continents, the gears of industry ground to a halt. Production lines, once humming with activity, fell silent. The relentless march of progress seemed to pause, suspended in an eerie stillness. Financial markets, the lifeblood of global trade, flatlined. The intricate dance of buying and selling, the constant flow of capital, ceased abruptly. The digital tickers froze, displaying a stark and unsettling stillness. Traders, accustomed to the frenetic pace of the market, stared at blank screens, their faces etched with confusion and disbelief. The information they relied upon had vanished, leaving them adrift in a sea of uncertainty. The very concept of a global market, a seamless web of interconnected economies, vanished as if it were a mirage. The intricate network of international trade routes began to fray, threatening to unravel the complex tapestry of global commerce. Trillions of dollars, euros, and yen were frozen in place, locked within digital vaults, inaccessible and inert. The lifeblood of the economy, the flow of capital, had been abruptly cut off, leaving businesses and individuals struggling to survive. Remote workers, the vanguard of the modern workforce, were suddenly cut off from their digital lifelines, isolated and unproductive. The promise of seamless connectivity had evaporated, leaving them stranded in their home offices. Laptops became useless bricks, their screens dark and unresponsive. Crucial project files, once readily accessible, were now locked away, inaccessible and irretrievable. Frustration mounted as deadlines loomed and productivity ground to a halt. Offices, once temples of digital efficiency, reverted to the archaic methods of pen and paper, handwritten notes replacing emails, and physical files supplanting digital databases. As a result, productivity plummeted, businesses struggled to function, and the global economy teetered on the edge of collapse. The digital revolution had been abruptly reversed, casting a long shadow over the future of work. Retail and commerce were thrown back a century as the digital infrastructure that supported online transactions crumbled. The convenience and efficiency of modern shopping were replaced by the limitations of traditional brick-and-mortar stores. E-commerce, The engine of modern retail disappeared overnight, leaving consumers stranded and businesses struggling to adapt. The digital marketplace, once a bustling hub of activity, fell silent. In this new reality, cash became king, the only reliable medium of exchange in a world without digital transactions. But ironically, few had any on hand, as the vast majority of transactions had become digital. The sudden shift back to cash created a scramble for physical currency, leaving many empty-handed. Small businesses equipped with old-fashioned cash registers thrived briefly, as they were able to process transactions without relying on digital infrastructure. Meanwhile, large chain stores, heavily reliant on digital systems, were paralyzed, unable to process transactions or manage their supply chains. The crisis exposed the inherent fragility of a system built on constant connectivity, revealing the vulnerabilities that lay hidden beneath the surface of our digital world. It highlighted our over-reliance on a complex network of digital infrastructure, a network that had become so integral to our lives that we had forgotten its inherent vulnerabilities. The principles of just-in-time manufacturing, which had revolutionized production processes, broke down completely. As supply chains were disrupted and factories ground to a halt, supply chains, once finely tuned and globally interconnected, fractured under the strain, leaving businesses scrambling to find alternative sources of materials and components. Factories, the engines of industrial production, and the intricate dance of logistics, the choreography of global trade, lost their rhythm, descending into chaos and disarray. For 24 hours, an eternity in the modern world, the engine of commerce, the driving force of the global economy, was switched off, plunging the world into an unprecedented state of economic limbo. The world was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth, its profound and all-encompassing digital dependence, a dependence that had become so ingrained in our lives that we had ceased to recognize its potential consequences. The silence of the markets, the absence of the constant hum of economic activity, was deafening, a stark reminder of the fragility of the systems we had come to rely upon. The skies emptied as the global aviation system was grounded. Air traffic control collapsed, planes landed using old radio methods, airports descended into chaos, departure boards froze, check-in counters failed, and security slowed to a crawl. Millions of travelers were stranded, mobility broken, ride-sharing apps died, taxis surged in demand. Public transport and high-speed rail faced massive disruptions. Digital maps went blank, drivers navigated by memory or paper, logistics companies lost track of fleets, deliveries halted. The world, once small and connected, felt vast and fragmented. The simple act of moving became a challenge. Humanity was grounded, forced to rediscover the limits of distance. With the digital world silent, people turned to older ways of connecting. Voices filled parks and streets as communities gathered to share news and reassurance. Rumors spread quickly, oral tradition reborn in the absence of verified news. Handwritten notes appeared on bulletin boards and shop windows, sharing vital information. Offices resurrected memos, runners carried messages between departments. Landline phones became precious links, their rings now welcome. The public phone network strained under the surge, revealing its own limits. Communication slowed, requiring presence or deliberate calls. People listened more intently, undistracted by buzzing devices. The pace of life shifted, fostering deeper interactions. For a day, the world rediscovered the power of face-to-face connection. The analog world, though messy, felt profoundly human. Intention replaced immediacy in every conversation. Hospitals faced a crisis as digital systems failed. Patient records were inaccessible, doctors relied on guesswork and symptoms, diagnostic equipment and emergency dispatch systems faltered, call centers were overwhelmed, forcing manual coordination with paper maps and radios. Delays in response times put lives at risk. Pharmacies couldn't process prescriptions or order new stock. Patients feared running out of life-sustaining medications. The fragility of healthcare's digital backbone was exposed. Professionals relied on training and ingenuity to cope. The outage revealed how vulnerable our most critical systems truly are. For students, the internet's disappearance ruptured daily life. Digital tools in schools were useless. Teachers improvised with chalk and storytelling. Children rejoiced, filling playgrounds with laughter and games. Imaginative play replaced screens for a day. Older students faced stress. Assignments and research halted. University libraries became hubs as students rediscovered analog research. The blackout highlighted the pitfalls of digital dependence. Critical thinking and curiosity were put to the test. The day forced a re-evaluation of education and play. Technology is a tool, not a substitute for creativity. The experience reminded us of the enduring value of human interaction. Governments operated in profound blindness. Communication between agencies and citizens was severed. Secure networks for security and diplomacy were down. Public services and information vanished, replaced by uncertainty and rumor. Emergency broadcasts and leaflets became the only tools. The crisis exposed vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure. The blackout forced a reassessment of national security and digital resilience. The silence was a wake-up call for the future. When the internet returned, the world did not simply resume. Relief was immense, but something had changed. The day offline left a mark on global consciousness. People questioned their digital habits and sought analog resilience. Families and communities valued face-to-face connections. Governments and corporations prioritized digital resilience and redundancy. The fragility of the system was now a lived experience. The blackout was a planetary lesson. Not a rejection, but a rebalancing. The digital world is a tool, not a destination. For a moment we reconnected with ourselves, and with each other.